today we are joined by Jeff McRitchie. He's a marketing leader with deep expertise in e-commerce, digital marketing, and growth strategy. Jeff is currently co-founder at MyBinding, where he's focusing on driving brand growth and revenue across both B2B and direct to consumer channels. One of the things that is particularly interesting about your journey is the experience that you bring to the table, because over the years, he's worked across leadership roles in marketing and e-commerce, and he's been helping businesses scale their online presence and customer acquisition strategies. And I've been told that earlier in his career, Jeff also played a key role in building MyBinding.com, helping transform it from a small direct sales organization into a nationally recognized online brand. So this brings us to today with over 15 years of experience in online marketing. And Jeff has spent much of his career focusing on what truly drives growth, whether that's e-commerce strategy, SEO, digital marketing, or building high-performing marketing teams. So today, without further ado, we'll be driving into e-commerce growth, digital marketing strategy, and what it really takes to build brands in today's competitive online landscape. Just only that. I mean, we're not aiming high at all.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to start by asking you, Jeff, because you've held roles across marketing executive leadership. So how does your perspective on marketing change when you move from CMO to CEO?
Well, in the CMO role, you're primarily focused on where do you get the sales, right? How do you get the brand in front of people? How are you representing the brand? And those are really important things. But as you step into that CEO role, you realize that there's a whole lot more to the picture. Right. And so suddenly profit, leadership, culture, those are all things that take a forefront. And so all of a sudden you're saying like, yes, I need to grow the company. Yes, I need to get in front of people. Yes, marketing is a core function of how we're going to do that. But at the same time, I need to make sure that the other portions of the equation are also covered. If you look at most organizations, they're going to be divided into like 4 primary parts. Marketing's one of them, but you also have operations, you have leadership, and you have finance, right? And so in the CEO role, you're responsible for all of those instead of just the one marketing function.
Thinking that also when you are CMO, you still have someone above you that there's the whole responsibility at the end of the day. But then when you're CEO, you are the one responsible for everything.
Right. And you would think that that would be amazing. And some days it feels amazing, but really there's lots of days where you wish that you might have somebody that could be responsible, right? So there's this tension there that like one of the best things about being CEO is that the buck stops with you. Like you get to make the decisions. One of the worst things about being CEO is that the buck stops with you. You get to make the decisions, which just means that you're also responsible. You're responsible for all of the outcomes, right? And not just that, you're also responsible for all the outcomes of the decisions that everyone else makes in the organization. So ultimately, everything rolls up to you. And that is amazing most days, but there are days I thought like, it would be really nice if maybe somebody else could make this one decision or be responsible for the result of the decision, because some decisions are just really hard.
Since we're talking about decisions, what is one marketing decision that looks good on paper, but often falls in reality?
There's a few, but like I'll pick one in particular, which is conversion rate optimization. On paper, you'd say all you have to do is improve your conversion rate by X% and your sales will go up by that much. And that it's very, very appealing. And we often will chase it. And interestingly enough, what I found is that on paper, it looks amazing. In practice, it's way, way harder than it looks, right? And so like the people that I know that have done it well, it has to become like part of your culture and something that's an ongoing process as opposed to an event. So in other words, someone will say, hey, I'm going to do conversion optimization for the next 3 or even 6 months. And what I find is that those results are never quite what are expected or what are promised. And the stories that you hear of somebody, changing the color of a button and making millions of dollars, it just doesn't materialize. But instead, what you find is a disciplined process of test and refine over time does work for CRO, but it's not that magical sort of, hey, I'm just going to do a split test of 2 buttons and see what works. And suddenly my revenue is going to go up by millions of dollars.
wish it happened, right?
I mean,
Would
I
be
wish it would
great.
work. Yeah.
Since we're talking about your experience, in your experience, what is the biggest difference between driving growth in D2C versus B2B?
So it's a little bit complicated, but I would say that B2B tends to be much more difficult. And some people would argue that, and they say, well, D2C has all of these moving portions, but you're really only worried about one audience, right? In that sort of thing, like the consumer audience, you can segment it, but often in B2B, you have many different audiences and you also have many different constituencies when you're trying to drive growth. So inside of a B2B organization, I find that there's many more silos and you're having to usually interact with the sales team. In addition to not only are you marketing for the company, you're also having to market for the sales team. You're dependent on the sales team to close those leads. Because often what happens in B2B is you're driving qualified leads that somebody else has to close. And so there's this tension that comes with B2B. In addition, the technology stack actually is more complex in a B2B organization, usually. But interestingly, the dollars can be a lot higher. So like the benefit of that is that you might have $1 million sale. And in many other companies, you're going to have $100 AOV. And to get to $1 million, you're going to have to sell 100,000 units. And in a B2B organization, you might be able to sell one sale that's $1 million. It's great, but you're going to work really, really hard for that $1 million sale. And so it's just different. And the marketing that kind of goes behind it is different as well.
I'm loving this conversation, and I need to ask, since we have been talking about you as a leader, as a CMO, as a CEO, any leadership decision that kept you up at night? And if so, what did it teach you?
There's been several, but I would say probably the hardest decision is the one that involves people in that leadership role. So, not that long ago, I took on a turnaround at an organization and we spent about 18 months turning the company around. But at the end, it became obvious that there was one division of the company that was really profitable and there was one division of the company that wasn't profitable at all. And that decision to have to shut the doors and to have people lose their jobs for that division was really tough. And we did everything that we could to try to make sure that they were taken care of, that they had lots of notice, all of those things. But it didn't make it any easier. I mean, so you think about that, like the marketing decisions are easy compared to the people decisions. At least I think so, and the ones that kept me up at night, it's those. I want to make sure, and especially as your organization grows and you have more and more people that count on you every day, there's this tension that says, like they count on me, on us for their life, for their livelihood. And I feel responsible for them. And so feeling like I don't want to let them down. And so I would say that's probably the hardest decision I've had to make, is that decision to sort of like to wind down a division of a company and see what that did with all these people, right? Like there was more than 40 people that lost their jobs, and that was tough.
So I have to ask, how do you balance empathy for your team while making tough business decisions?
So there's a couple different things for me. Like one of those things is that I feel like I need to slow down. So like my first instinct is to go fast, right? To be able to see a problem and to solve that problem. But when it involves people, you have to slow down. You have to stop and you have to think about the impact that it has on the people. You have to give people the benefit of the doubt. And then you have to sit there and you have to really weigh, is there another way to do this, right? Like, so because interestingly enough, there often is another way. Like your first instinct might be like, okay, this is an easy problem to solve. All we have to do is we'll trim back here, we grow here, everything's fixed. But often that trim back here involves people's lives, right? And so I think one of the things is to stop and ask, wait a second, is there another alternative? Could those people fit into another place in the organization? Is there a way for us to turn that around? And don't go with the first instinct might be to say, hey, let's cut. But instead, maybe it's to grow. Like maybe it's an option to reorg, right? Like find a creative and new way to structure things. So those aren't always possible and that's hard. But I would say that as a leader, one of the things is to stop and ask yourself, is there another option? Especially when those really hard sort of people facing decisions sort of come up.
What is the biggest misconception that people have about scaling a business?
That one's tough because I think everybody thinks scaling a business is something a little bit different, right? And they think that like there must be this magic sauce in it. Like there's got to be this one thing that you have to do. And in my experience, it's not one thing. It's often many things. And so it's the pieces have to come together. And so I would say that's probably the biggest misconception. It's just like, all you got to do is get good at marketing. But honestly, if your operations aren't good or your finance piece is not there, you can't scale. And so interestingly enough, you have to have those, all of the sort of pieces come together to really scale. And I think that's probably the biggest misconception. I would say that you can sometimes scale if you have really good marketing, you can scale until you fail in the other areas. It's a little bit like if you have really good finance, maybe not so much. Like, so in certain areas, like you might not find the scale right away, but to truly successfully scale, you have to have all of those components working together. And that just means that you're going to have to figure out and bring together a really good team. And it also means that you're going to have to really think about your business model. And I think that's probably one of the misconceptions that I can think of is that, like people think, well, all I have to do is crack this thing, right? Like all I got to do is get digital marketing to work and then we're going to scale. All I got to figure out is customer acquisition. And yet really it's a business model problem that you're trying to solve. And once you've solved that business problem, once you can figure out the unlock for the business model, often things really come together, but that requires all four of those areas, right? Your leadership, your finance, your operations, and your marketing to work together.
I'm thinking as human beings, we always want to grow. So we always want to scale.
Mhm.
But do you think that it is a must for every company to scale? Or maybe some just polish what they have and work on what they have instead of rushing to scale the business?
So I would say that, like, in terms of the way that a lot of people talk about scaling, I definitely think that scaling for the sake of scaling is not the goal, right? And there's many, many organizations that are better off just staying the size that they are and being really, really good at the thing that they do. And they don't need to go and double their size or triple their size in order to accomplish that. And they might actually find that they're not better, they're actually worse if they do that. And so I think that this is the tension. But at the same time, I think we always need to grow. So there's this piece of it like says you don't necessarily need to scale, meaning like you're not having to massively increase the size of your sales. But I do think it's really important that an organization doesn't become stale and just sort of stay where it's at. So like we're always constantly moving and we're growing, and organizations that stop and think that they're going to stay the same often actually decline. So I would say that you don't have to scale, but you have to grow. And I know that sounds a little bit like it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it does make a sense if you think about growth as not just being financial, right? Growth is personal. Growth is culture. Growth is continuous improvement inside your organization. And growth is also in happiness. Like, so we need to find that thing that makes us happy, right? And you think about it, especially in smaller organizations, if you're happy, why mess with it? Like truly, continue to grow as a person, continue to grow as a leader, continue to grow as a company, but you don't need to necessarily grow financially and you don't have to add a ton more complexity. And I think that's one of the other problems is like often with scaling requires a lot more people, a lot more problems. And people sometimes will wake up and they look around and they're like, I didn't sign up for this.
Love that we're talking about growth because I was gonna actually ask you, in your experience, what actually drives sustainable growth? Something that most people overlook.
So the really hard thing is that most people, when they think about sustainable growth, they are thinking about like, well, I have to go and market or do something, right? Like I got to go and like, again, it's back to the secret sauce. Everybody thinks that there's something special that they must do in order to find it. What I find actually is that the companies that sustainably grow are incredibly disciplined. They know what they do and they know how they do it, and they do it day in and they do it day in and day out. Right. And so I think that the challenge there is really looking at it and saying, okay, do I have something that differentiates me in the market? Am I excellent at the thing that I do? Those things lead to sustained growth over a long period of time. The gimmicks, the things that you do, like, any one of us, potentially, if we had enough money, we could go buy a Super Bowl commercial and I'm sure we would grow and then we go broke because the problem is if there's not enough substance behind what we're doing, we kind of fall on our face. So I think that's true for most organizations. And the answer is that there needs to be something there, this differentiation, this something that says like, hey, there's something special here. There's something that we've built that is unique in the marketplace that people really value and are willing to pay for. And once you build that and you continue to improve it like day in and day out over a long period of time, you find that it becomes harder and harder to compete with those organizations. And I think that's that sustainable growth that we're looking for, not the flash in the pan, not the big splashy marketing campaign that gets a ton of attention, because ultimately that attention fades and then what's left? If you don't have that model, if you don't have that differentiation, it just becomes really, really hard to sustain anything.
everyone thinks they're different and everyone
Yeah.
thinks they have a unique product.
Right.
So, how can you tell whether it's your own ego telling you that you have a unique product or that you actually do?
I think that's a really tough one because you're right. Like most people, if you ask them, hey, what makes you different? They can tell you, 5 different things that make them different. And they think about, look at how special we are. And yet, if you really step back and you look, you start to ask yourself, are we really that different? Are we that differentiated in the market? And what's to prevent somebody from coming along and copying us tomorrow, right? So I think that there's this tension for sure. That this piece that says like, well, how do you know? Like I would say you'll know when you know. Like, I mean, if you're really honest with yourself, when you're going to bed and you think about your business and you think about it, like often the companies that don't differentiate, I think you have a little bit of a pit in your stomach because it's a little bit like the house of cards that you're expecting to come crashing in at any time. So I think that's one piece. I think the other thing that is you hear it from your customers. Like, so I think as marketers and as leaders, get closer to your customers and listen to them because they'll tell you. They'll tell you if there's something that you're doing that's special. They'll also tell you if there's something that you're doing that's not special, right? And they vote with their feet, but they also vote with their mouths. And so like really listening to your customers' feedback, getting with your customer service team and reading the surveys and the emails that come in from the customers and understanding like, are we doing a good job? Because this is an interesting thing. Like you have metrics that say, are we doing a good job of acquiring customers? What about keeping them? So I think it becomes a little bit of a sense of being honest with ourselves about where we sit in the world, but also about looking at the metrics and the data and the information that's coming back at us and reading through that to say, wait a second, maybe there's some things that we need to improve on. And I think that's part of that continuous improvement thing that I was talking about, because even the best organizations have areas where they need to grow in, where they need to improve it. And so I think that there's a piece of this that says like, if we ever think that we've arrived, we're probably fooling ourselves. There might be something special. And I think when you have something special, you can feel it. But at the same time, you have to also recognize that there's also areas where, we're probably failing and we need to recognize that and to improve.
Now that we're talking about this, I do want to ask you if you had to give one piece of advice to marketers who want to move into leadership roles, what would it be?
The hard thing about this is like to get to the leadership role, you usually have to shine as a marketer. But once you get there, you have to shine as a leader. Right. And so I think that this is the tension. I'm going to say it's going to be actually 2 pieces of advice. I'm going to cheat a little bit. And I'm going to say, one, solve really big, hard problems. Right. That's a great way to get there. But do it with a team of people, like do it with other people and through other people and alongside other people to hone those leadership skills. Because ultimately, if you get there just by solving the big problems and you haven't done it alongside other people, I think you haven't developed the leadership things that you need to really take it to the next level.
Nowadays, there are some concepts that everyone talks about, and one of those concepts is digital transformation. Everyone talks about it. Everyone says they're doing it or they're about to do it, or they work at a company who's doing it.
Mhm.
But you've led global e-commerce and digital transformation for real. So what does digital transformation actually mean in practice?
It's usually a mess, right? Just honestly, for most organizations, we're just trying to find our way. So you think about this and you say, like, for the most part, we got old, antiquated systems. This is especially true, by the way, in B2B. So in B2B organizations, often they've been doing it this way for years. And you ask them, well, why do you do it that way? And the answer is, well, because we've always done it that way. And so you say, well, then what do we have to do? Well, it's interesting because you add digital to it because we're going to use digital tools to transform. But in reality, it's just transformation. It's the idea of like, how do we do something differently than we've done for the longest time? Right? How do we transform our systems and make them more efficient? The challenge with digital transformation is often it's done for the sake of digital and not for the sake of transformation. So it's the idea of like, hey, everything would just be better if we implement, and you can fill in the blank with ERP, CRM, warehouse management system. I've seen them all. And what you find is that if those things aren't driving the business outcomes, but instead the purpose is because we feel like we need better technology, they usually fit. But instead, if we have the business outcome in mind, in other words, if the process is solid already and we're using technology to automate it or enhance it, then it works great. But if you go the other way and you try to transform the business by let's bring us into the next century and let's implement all of these cool new technologies, I think what you find is they fail because they're not there to produce the outcome and the value. Instead, the idea is usually it's a leader who says, hey, we're not with the times. We have to do this. And then what you find is like, no one really asked for it. Nobody really wants it. And it's not really making anything more efficient. And that lack of buy-in causes digital transformation to fail all the time. I think that's one of those tensions. Everybody says that they want digital transformation, but lots of organizations aren't quite ready for it. And digital transformation is usually slower and needs to be better thought through in order to be successful.
Yeah, because it sounds really cool, but I wonder because everyone tells me they're doing it, and I'm like, are you actually doing it?
Right.
You've done so much, you've learned so much, you've taught so much, and for such a long time. So looking back, what is something that you wish you had learned earlier in your career?
I probably wish that I had started leading teams and developing people earlier. I mean, in the beginning, when I first started MyBinding, it was me and my computer, and I was coding, and I was launching, and I would work really crazy hours. Like think about the crazy developer with the really big Coke. That was me. And for a number of years, I kind of thought I had to do it all on my own. And then, like when I hired my first sort of employees to help me and to sort of assist me, I looked at them as more like tools than like as partners. And it took me quite a while to realize, wait a second, you can actually accomplish a whole lot more when you have the right people by your side. And so I think that's probably the lesson that I wish that I had learned faster. It took me too long to figure out that I needed better people alongside me, people that were better than me at these different tasks, so that I could trust them and that I could keep moving in the lanes that I was really excellent at.
Would you say is the best gift this career has given you?
That's a tough one, but I want to say that it's probably the ability to think outside the box. Like, interestingly enough, like especially in digital marketing and ecom, like things change really fast. Right. And I would say right now in this time that we're in, they're changing even faster than ever. You have AI and all these things that are developing. The world is changing. And so this career in particular constantly challenges me to think outside the box and find creative solutions to problems, to rethink the way that we do business. And I can't really imagine being any other way, but it's given me the opportunity to really stretch and find interesting and innovative ways to sort of reach people in marketing and to rethink business models too. So like, MyBinding that I founded, it's a B2B company, but it's direct to consumer. So what is it? It's actually B2B2C. And like when we started, that didn't exist. If you think about it, 2003, like there weren't a lot of business to business companies out there selling direct to consumer. And honestly, I don't know that we thought that we could even do it. Like there were times where like, will this work? Will anyone buy this thing on the internet? That's the time when Amazon was still known for selling books and not for selling all of the rest of the things that we buy from. And so you think about it, and all along the journey, it's been the ability to sort of rethink, to challenge the status quo, and to really think outside the box that I think has been like probably the biggest gift that this career has given me.
Since you just mentioned I do want to pick your brain on this because
Sure.
some people say AI is the worst thing that has happened to people, and other people say that AI is the best thing. So,
Okay.
this is your opinion. In marketing, is AI a good thing or a bad thing?
I think overall it's a good thing. I think it provides us with tools that are incredible. Like we can accomplish things today that I just couldn't imagine even 2 years ago. Right. I mean, in terms of the scale of work that we can accomplish, the level of content that we can create. I mean, there's really incredible things that we can do. So I love that. I love what it does. I do think that there's some pretty big dangers, though. I'm really worried about the next generation and where and how are they going to be developed. So you think about it inside of our companies for years and years and years, you hire an intern or an entry level person fresh out of college and you give them a job, and that job, is usually pretty tedious, right? Like often it's, it's not going to be the most challenging things in your organization. They're going to cut their teeth on some, what I'll call simpler tasks and learn the ropes and grow. Well, thing is, I can get AI to do those things better than that entry-level person. And so now the question becomes, so what I really need is I need someone that's like sort of mid-career who can come in and tell the AI what to do, right? And help guide the AI. Well, the problem is that how do you get somebody from the beginning of their career to mid-career so that they can tell what the AI what to do? And so I think that there's this challenge and gap that's coming that I'm really concerned about. On the other hand, I'm really excited because more senior people can accomplish sometimes like 5 or 10 times more in a day using AI, which I think is amazing. I just get a little concerned about like, okay, well, what's next, right? How are we going to reshape our teams and our workforce? Or else we're going to wake up one day and we're going to look around and we're going to say, wait a second, I don't have anybody who's mid-career anymore. I either have really experienced people or people who have no experience. And the challenge is then what?
But you think outside the box, so you're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
Jeff, this has been great. Thank you so much. I know lots of people will want to talk to you. So if they want to reach you, how do they find you?
Yeah, so you can always send me an email, jeff@mybinding.com. I love to talk e-commerce with people. So if you're in e-commerce, shoot me a message and we can chat e-commerce. I actually do a little bit of consulting on the side as well. And whether it's paid search or SEO, if you want to talk about those things, or if you just want to talk leadership, excellent. Like, just give me a shout. I'd love to hear from you. It's just jeff@mybinding.com.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.